everyone. My name is Halima Siddiqui, and I'm the project coordinator at Health Nexus. Health Nexus oversees several provincial initiatives related to FASD, the FASD provincial website where you can find recent and up-to-date information about what's happening, learn more about resources and tools, and find out services available in your local community. We also allocate subsidies every year to 40 plus support groups for individuals with FASD and their families. And we designed an online training for service providers from various sectors, including healthcare and nursing, education, mental health and addictions, justice and corrections, and community and social work. Before we start the presentation, we would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous people of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on this virtual platform, let's take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people and their cultures. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. Please join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we can each, in our own way, try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. During the presentation, you may be tempted to ask questions at the end about yourself or loved ones with FASD. Please do not use any identifying information to protect people's privacy. By law, we have a duty to report to Children Aid Society or the police any threat to a child or direct attempt to harm yourself or someone else. Presenters cannot provide clinical advice, as this would require professional counseling and more in-depth knowledge of the situation and behaviors at stake. Today's discussion provides information about latest research, evidence-based practice, or general education tips and advice. If you need ongoing support, please consider connecting with your local FASD worker for supports or join one of our Health Nexus support groups for individuals with FASD and their families. You can find this information on our website, fasdinfotasaf.ca. So today we are welcoming Rebecca Pauls. Rebecca is the Executive Director of Plan Lifetime Advocacy Network, Plan, a Vancouver-based social enterprise that partners with families and people facing social isolation to secure their future by mobilizing relationships and leveraging community assets. Since joining Plan 9 years ago, Rebecca has led a complete redesign of planning practices to integrate principles of person-centered planning, ABCD, narrative practices, and independent facilitation. After demonstrating the strength and flexibility of this community approach, Rebecca is regularly invited to consult with organizations about how it can be scaled and applied to population groups across North America. Rebecca serves faculty member with the Asset-Based Community Development Institute at DePaul University in Chicago. We are thrilled to listen to her presentation. Please ask your questions in the Q&A, and we'll provide more information links in the chat if need be.
Thanks so much, Halima, and hello to all of you. It's so nice to be able to spend a little bit of time together this morning. I've prepared a short presentation. Will take about 20 minutes, and I have some stories to tell you and some key points about personal support networks, but I'm really looking forward to the conversation and the question and answer time at the end because while the concepts are broad, they might mean a little bit different for yourself, someone you love, or the people that you work together with. So I really want to encourage you to put your questions or your comments in the chat box, and we will spend some time towards the end of the presentation doing that. So again, welcome and thank you so much, Halima, for that warm introduction. So today's presentation is called Creating a Circle of Care. You may have heard of personal support networks or circles of friends, circles of support. Really, we're all talking about the same thing. We're talking about people who have a small group of people around them to ensure that they don't go through life alone, that they have the support that they need. Today, we're going to be talking about what that looks like. So I've started with some pictures of different support networks that are part of Plan, and we'll talk a little bit about who Plan is and how families have come together to create this organization. This is a picture of one network. You'll see many people who are smiling, who seem happy to be there. You'll see different people with different ages, different ability levels. And sometimes when I'm doing presentations like this, I ask the audience or the participants to let me know what they see. And usually people aren't able to tell who the person at the center of the network is or who the person who might have the disability or extra support needs are, because they're really just a group of people together. You'll see this network looks a little bit different. They're having dinner together. There's a social aspect of it. You can tell that I think it was Canada Day when this group was coming together. This is another network. Again, you'll see that every network looks a little bit different for people, but the principles that we'll talk about today are the same. And the last one, this is another network where the mom is here, two planned team members are here, lots of friends, kids. So again, when you see these networks, you see people together socializing, and that's definitely a big aspect of what personal support networks are. But networks also play a very key role in the safety and the security of people with disabilities, people with FASD, basically anyone who's at risk of being isolated. Helping someone to build a personal support network is a very effective way to support them to getting through life. I think we can all think about people who only have paid people in their life, and because of that, they're missing out on a lot of the important quality of life pieces that we all enjoy. So at Plan, the work that we do is help people to build their personal support networks. And what you don't see in those photos are that those groups of people, while they have fun together, while they have barbecues and picnics and birthday parties, they also ensure that the person always knows the loving support of friends and family, that they can contribute to and participate in a caring and inclusive community, that they're respected and empowered to make decisions, that they can live in a place they call home, enjoy a meaningful and financially secure life, and that they have peace of mind that allows their family to know that when mom and dad are no longer here or able to be as involved, that their son or daughter will continue to be surrounded by loving, caring friends and relationships. So, Plan is an organization that was started by families about 40 years ago. And at the time, like many of you know, life was very different for people with disabilities. They still weren't welcomed into the school system. Many of the large institutions were still in full force. And these parents came together and they recognized that life um, could take a different path for their sons and daughters. They recognized that they might have some support needs, that their life might be a little bit more complex than they thought they would be. But they knew that while their sons and daughters had disabilities, that they could also be full and contributing citizens. So the families came together to ask the question, what can we do better together than what we can do alone? And immediately they started working on some big advocacy pieces in decision making, representation agreements, financial securities. But what they also recognized that if they were going to chart this new path of community inclusion, of their sons and daughters being so involved, there's that question that some of you who are parents in the room might know it as the 3 a.m. question. What happens when I'm gone? What happens when I'm no longer here to do all of the things that I do as a parent for my son and daughter? And that question's really driven the work of Plan. And we continue to ask the question, and the answer is always relationships. Thank goodness things have come a long way in the last 40 years, and now there's really great supports and services available. Some of you might provide those types of services, but even the best support worker or professional has limitations about the ways that they can be involved in a person's life, thinking about personal care decisions, managing wills and trusts and estates when the parents pass away. So there's really key roles, and the critical role of relationships is very important for us all to think about. So I'm glad that we're taking the time to do that today. But as we're all getting older, I think we can all recognize that the parents have recognized that the question isn't necessarily what happens when I'm gone, but it's what happens now that I'm exhausted, that I'm aging, that I have my own sicknesses and support needs. Parents are less able to keep up. And the key role of personal support networks is one of the ways that we can support both people and families to make that happen. So here's another picture of a support network. All of the work that we do at Plan and kind of learning about these networks is driven by people with disabilities and families and what they know helps. So we're guided by the families and we help to share those ideas and stories, kind of like what we're doing today. So the mission of Plan, and this is important to recognize, that the entire organization doesn't necessarily provide services to people, nor do personal support networks, but we bring people together. We convene people or offer invitations for folks to be involved in personal support networks. And that's one of the things that make networks or circles of care unique, that they're focused on the person, their needs, what they want and need in life, but also for the families and the people around them, kind of that image of a circle. So we want to make sure that people with disabilities can live a good life, that families can have peace of mind, knowing when they're no longer here, their son and daughter will continue to be safe and secure. And we do this by nurturing inclusive and engaged communities. Like you, we believe that every single person has gifts and abilities, and none of our neighborhoods, none of our families, none of our organizations will be as vibrant as they could be unless each person has the space and has what they need to contribute. So that's really the essence of the work of bringing networks together. So the definition of a network is a small group of people who are active and engaged that provide care, love, and support. And a really interesting activity, if we had more time or we were together in a room, is to ask that question: what is it that networks or friends can do that paid people can't? And what is it that paid people can do that networks can't? And more, especially as systems and funding and support is limited, we're learning about the key role of friends and relationships in people's lives and just how critical that is. So who are the people that make up networks? Oftentimes it's friends and families that already exist in a person's life. We start by sitting with families and saying, who are the people that care about you? Who are the people that you care about? And most often people want to be involved and they're just waiting for an invitation to come together. So a lot of times there are already people that can come together and form a network. But we all know people who don't have those folks in their lives, and then we look around them to the community, to other places, and invite folks in. So the focus of it, though, like I've written here, I've written some notes just because we have such a short time together. I wanted to put a lot of notes in these slides for you if you wanted to read it through. It's always focused on who is the person at the center, what are their gifts, what do they care about, and how can we all connect focused on that. Personal support networks foster meaningful relationships. They provide support for making decisions and planning for the future. They can ensure safety, security, and financial stability, and they create opportunities for contribution and full citizenship. So you might be wondering, what does this look like? How do we build networks? You might know someone who doesn't have a lot of people in their life and think that they might be able to benefit from this. And so we can spend some time talking about that. So when we're working with someone, a family, to build network, the most important thing is to understand who they are as a person, what their gifts are, what they like to do, how they spend their time, all of the good things in their life. We start with the things that are strong. We don't focus necessarily on the problems or the difficulties they're experiencing at first. We're looking at who the person is and what their gifts and abilities are. The next thing is looking at who are the current relationships in someone's life. And sometimes we sit at a dining room table and we just jot down all of the names or all of the people that come to mind that are in a person's life. Who do they care about? Who cares about them? And at this point, we aren't necessarily making a quality judgment on how involved that aunt is. We're just really making an inventory of the folks who might be able to be part of the network. Like we know there's some people who don't have a strong network to start with. And then we think about what are the roles that someone can play. If they don't have someone, who are they looking for? Maybe it's someone to play soccer with, maybe it's someone to go to book club with, or we all know people who like to phone people 100 times a day. Who are the people that could take those phone calls and maintain those types of connections? The next thing we do is look to the neighborhood and the community, and this is where asset-based community development really comes into this framework. It's looking at who are the other people, where are the groups and the associations, the faith communities, where are the kind and the welcoming people that we might be able to find, to build friendships and to nurture the connections. And like I said, we don't focus on a diagnosis or the stressful parts in life to start with, but we know that that exists. And so when we're spending time with someone looking to build their network, we also ask about the important considerations. So, what is it that we need to know about this person to make sure that they're healthy and they're safe as they're enjoying their friendships, as they're out and involved in the community? And we flip that. We don't let it be a limitation, but we ask, what do we need to know and what other supports do we need to put in place? And the way that networks can really function is through planning meetings, through providing opportunities for the person to share what their goals and their dreams are, what they'd like to do, and then each person who's part of the circle has the opportunity to contribute or to say, okay, I can help you with this, or I can drive you to the mall on Saturdays when you need to get your groceries, instead of depending just on one person for everything or on paid people. A personal network and the conversations and the planning conversations that exist provide an opportunity for other people and friends to be involved. And through that, um, people with disabilities are able to experience financial security. They're able to find a place to call home and able to be supported in their decision making. And we know that sometimes it will take 5 or 10 people to fulfill the role of one mom or one family member, and that's why the role of the network is really important. From the future planning perspective of it, as parents pass away, or like we said, are less able to be involved, that's where members of the circle are able to step in and provide those important and specific roles. In British Columbia, we have a supported decision-making structure called representation agreements. And so one of the main ways that network members are able to be involved is to be that next in line, to be the legal decision maker, to support the person in that way. In Ontario, there's guardianship, and we're currently looking for alternatives to that and supporting people to make decisions, but always having a group of people to talk to journey life through. I think we can all think of our own lives if we have someone else to be able to talk to about the things that are stressing us out or the things that we need. That solves a big part of the problem because we know that we're not alone in it. And another really interesting topic for one of these conversations could be loneliness and all of the detrimental effects of loneliness. And we know that the flip side of that is that relationships matter because they can create a sense of belonging, friendship, the guidance that we're talking about. And I think about the friends that I have who have FASD and just how important it is to talk through decisions that they're making and things that they want to do to create plans together. So the personal support network can become that group of trusted voices for navigating the challenges or the things that people are wanting in their lives. Another piece of it is security. If you think about or empathize and think about yourself in the role of a parent, not every young person or person wants their mom and their dad in their apartment all the time, seeing how things are going, but there's still concerns or still want to know how people are doing. And so the presence of a network and having a small group of friends that are active and engaged, there's a very natural way of kind of monitoring and being involved in a different way, supporting people in a natural community-based way. At Plan, we build networks with a team of community connectors. Sometimes we think that they're glorified volunteers in a very special way because our connectors work 4 to 6 hours per month. We're very intentional about that number of people. If the connectors, or that number of hours, if the connectors worked for 10 hours or 12 hours, the tendency might be to do the things that the person needs for them, to serve them in that way. But the focus is really on building a community, building a group of people, because that's what's sustainable long into the future. It's not just about providing the services. I guess the story would be you could help someone to go to the movies, or you could ask them who else might you want to go to the movies with and help them to coordinate and make a friend that way. So Plan has a team of community community connectors, and we also have a family advocate, and that's someone who supports the networks after mom and dad have passed away. Our community advocate is able to step in and understand all of the benefits that are available right now, especially in British Columbia, and I know there's some concerns in Ontario as well, helping people to get the funding that they need and the support funding. Our community navigator is someone, or sorry, our community family advocate is someone who spends time with people in their homes for as long as they need, again sitting around the dining room table, just making a plan and supporting them every step of the way, because we know how hard systems can be to navigate. I think the reason that personal networks work and are such a complement in the full plans for people to help them to live good lives is that they're a very personalized approach. Again, we focus on the person's gifts and interests. Not many of us connect with friends or other people based on the things that are wrong or the things that are hard in our life. We connect based on shared interests. And so we really leverage that, understanding the relationships with the friends, with the network, and then who the other paid people might be who could help and complement that support. And there's a huge focus on safety and well-being. And again, I know that some of my friends and the folks that I know with FASD appreciate having a circle of folks to depend on to think through. Some people I know who like to participate in more risky behavior, their personal support network can be a good counsel with them to decide if it's something that they want to do or could do, or how to make something happen in a safer way, building in those types of safeguards. So our process is collaborative and flexible. Um, if you're thinking about folks that you know that might appreciate or benefit from a personal support network, the principles that we're talking about gifts and relationships, community, talking about important considerations, those are the values that are relevant for everyone. And then I know some of you work in jobs, you are support workers or folks who are a resource. I think the question there is always asking who else can be involved. So you might be able to sit across the table in a planning meeting or working together with someone, but asking them who else can be involved in this conversation that mobilizes the work that you're doing together with them and helps them to implement the plans and get the support that they need. Another big piece of it is that it's here on the slide, I've called it ongoing adaptation, but it's when you have a small group of people who are there and care about you and support you, they can flex, they can change just as much as people change their priorities. And I know folks who only have paid people in their life really miss that kind of flexibility that they're building with themselves. So this is another picture of a personal support network. And at plan, at least twice per year, we bring the full network together for a planning meeting, and we go through each of those categories. We talk about relationships, contribution, how is the person involved in their community, and again, the financial security, decision making, and a place to call home. And as that's getting tougher for people to find affordable places to live, bringing together a network of people. Those people also have connections within the community and can help to solve the challenges more than just the person or the person and their family who might feel very alone and overwhelmed by what they need to do in their lives. It's also a deeply relationship based approach. Again, we always look to community when we need things to do, ways to be involved, and we believe by contributing, that's the way that relationships can be most built. And I guess the part that I want to wrap up here on is that when we think about the folks that we know who have disabilities and other things that are keeping them isolated, the most important thing is that we can face the future together. Just like the families that came together to start Plan 40 years ago. They recognize that together we can do more than we can do when we're alone. And so I really want to encourage you, as you're spending time with people and serving, or if you're family members, or maybe you're a person who has FASD, excuse me, or another disability, thinking about who the people in your life are and who might be able to serve as a circle of support to maintain those connections. Um, doesn't always solve every problem, but it sure makes it a lot easier to go through when you know that you're not alone in that. So that's the fastest overview, I think, of personal support networks. We do at Plan have an online course that some people participate in, that takes about 7 or 8 hours to learn how to be a facilitator of a personal support network. We also, similar to what Health Nexus does, have family groups that come together to support each other, to share their ideas and connections. Again, just recognizing that being together is better than being alone. And as we look ahead to the future, even as we look back to this year, there's a lot of really challenging things going on in the world right now and in families' lives, even trying to have enough money to buy groceries and again to find an apartment or a place to call home. Focusing on providing care, caring for the people, and reaching out and doing that. I think sometimes we care about others, and sometimes we want to help, but we're just so busy we don't take that step to do it. And so I really want to encourage you this holiday season, and as we look ahead to next year, as you see people in your lives or folks that you're working with who might be isolated, really to share this idea about bringing folks closer together in that circle, to support each other, to stay connected with each other. And like you can see in all of the photos that I shared, I could have told you many stories about each of them. Being together in community is safer, is much more effective, and easier to navigate a lot of the challenges that we're experiencing now. So that's a bit about personal support networks. Plan's website is plan.ca. You can check that out, and all of our contact information's there if you want to get in touch and talk about any specific situations. But I'm guessing that even those here might have some questions about the things that I've said, or maybe one area that I spoke about is more interesting to you. So I'll stop sharing my screen now, and I'd love to hear what questions you have or what comments you have.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I have a first question right here. Do most networks pay a facilitator to run the group, or do you find most are 100% volunteer?
It goes both ways. In Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, Plan exists and has a team of community connectors. So I think when there's someone available to do that work, having a paid person is very supportive of families, because it's easier for someone else to come in and facilitate or ask people to be involved. But in a lot of places across the country and even into the States and around the world, something like this just doesn't exist. The role of the community connector, and in that way, someone naturally steps into the role, or someone works in a volunteer capacity. But
Yeah.
it's always helpful to have someone who's identified as the facilitator or the connector.
How long do you remain involved? How do referrals come to you?
Lands network of families, we stay involved for the lifetime of the individual. That's how the network answers that question, what happens when I'm gone? And so Plan, our family network, is not government funded. Families pay fees to be involved, and they pay their facilitator. So in that way, it also creates the sustainability and the security as funding changes. But for other people, especially for younger people who kind of naturally have their own networks. Families sometimes call us and ask us if we can just facilitate a family meeting or facilitate a planning meeting with a network. So that's kind of more one-off. But I'd say that Having a group of people who are involved on a social level, who are active and engaged in life when things are going well, is extremely important for when times are tough. You need to have people to call when those emergencies or those crises happen. And so I'd say that it's an ongoing process, but anything that we can do, even sitting with someone and helping to identify the caring relationships in their life, is an important step. So ideally, as long as possible, but anything helps.
Someone in the chat commented, needed the reminder that others are probably just waiting to be asked to help more. Hard to step out of this role and open up for others to step in.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. I think all of us in our hearts as people, we want to help and we want to be involved, but these days it's almost countercultural, because we are so busy and we drive places and we stay in our houses or we have backyards. There's not that same kind of community connection that naturally happens in a lot of neighborhoods. And the example that I use when I'm talking to large groups of people, I say if I walk off this stage and I fall and I break my leg, 20 of you are going to come and help me. One of you is going to touch my head and make sure I'm feeling okay. Someone's going to call my husband and tell him I need to go to the doctors. Someone else is going to make sure that I have ice or whatever else that I need. People will come because the opportunity is there. But if I walk off the stage and walk to the back of the room, maybe one or two people will come and be like, oh, nice presentation. And then we'll go on. So we all have these ideas of things that we want to do, to care for other people or even say nice things to people or say hello to people. But I think that we're busy, we buy what we need instead of sharing it with others. I think that the culture we need to get back to is that one where if we have a good idea, if we want to reach out to someone, if we're thinking about someone, just think of how good it feels when someone calls you and says, "Hey Becky, I was thinking about you today. I hope things are going well." Or how are your kids? Like we feel good. And in our current systems and in our work, there's so much that we don't have and so much that we can focus on in the problems. This model of being connected with each other, we have it available to us. We can all care, we can all be kind, we can all help each other, and it's just a decision that we need to make.
Thank you, Rebecca. Another question we have here. Do you have suggestions if a focused person is resisting the idea of a network of support?
Yeah, lots of them because it sometimes happens. Um, I think doing it on the person's terms is important. Really, the focus of a personal network is just that there's someone else there, that the person knows that they have someone to call, that they're not absolutely alone in this world like they might feel. So if it's a situation where the person lives with their family, maybe the network becomes the network for mom to talk things through or to share ideas and resources. I know some situations where the person um, accepts that you're going to build a network, but will stay in the other room and just kind of listen in. It takes a lot in some situations. It's not something you can force. I do say to families who come and want to build a network, if their son or daughter doesn't want to, and doesn't want to reach out to people or doesn't want to be involved, that kind of limits our ability to do it. But it doesn't limit the avail or the ability of the people in that person's life to care about them. So we would look at ways to nurture the relationships. An example would be if when the person's birthday is coming up, sending an email reminder to the cousins or to the neighbors or to their friends and be just a reminder, it's Jimmy's birthday coming up. If you need our address or if you want to buy something on Amazon, here's what he's really into right now. So everyone, I believe, wants to be loved and cared for. And so sometimes you need to be kind of sneaky in the way that you communicate it with folks and just take time, because there's lots of reasons why people are isolated when we look at trust factors, we look at abandonment, we look at trauma. There's that piece. But again, it's the care and the love that people can experience from others what will help to heal that.
Do you have suggestions for ensuring that networks continue after parents have died?
Yeah. I think oftentimes when the parents have passed away, that's when the networks play the most formal roles. Immediately after the parent passes away, someone steps into the role of being the trustee. And so that's the person who's helping to disperse the funds that the family member would have left in the trust for the person. So that's a formal role. That person needs to be involved in the network to know the person, to be involved, to know how to make those plans. So that person will be involved for a period of time. In terms of decision making, in British Columbia, we try to plan for what happens when mom and dad pass away. So we'll have a next in line who's going to be the next representative. So that's where it usually, because we divide the roles up, it's usually 3 or 4 people. So there's always kind of a core network after parents pass away. There's the social network, and then there's the people who have the important and specific roles. So we find that. Another piece that we've started to do since the pandemic is have monthly calls or regularly scheduled, even Zoom calls, for people to stay connected, and just talk casually. That makes it a lot easier than people don't have to leave their house and can just call and connect that way. And our connectors send out monthly updates as much as possible. They're sitting with the person who has the network and updating their friends and relationships about what's going on in their life. Kind of like a Christmas letter when we say, this person's in university, we had a new baby, but just outlining all of the things that's happened in that week to make it easier for people to be involved. So we find that the monthly updates really help people to be involved, but there and to stay involved, but there's all kinds of reasons why people don't. If it's a younger network, sometimes when people graduate from university, they go off somewhere else or even graduate from college or start having their own family. But the nice thing is when there's a network of 5 or 6, when one person has to be less involved, there's still that core group there. And oftentimes, if you've stayed in touch with that person, if they need to take 3 or 4 years kind of not as involved when they're raising their young family, then they come back and they bring the kids. And so all of a sudden there's kids in the network too.
What can we as a community do to support families struggling to create a network for their loved one with a disability?
I think start by thinking about the people in your own life who might be isolated, and reaching out to them. I've presented in this meeting kind of the frameworks that we use for a network, but really what we're talking about people is about people caring for each other and being active and engaged in your life. So if you're thinking about a neighbor, thinking about maybe someone in your family or someone in your community who's aging and isolated, or a person who has a disability who you know doesn't have a lot of friends, I think start by reaching out and being involved yourself, or even just that question, like I talked about how we do relationship maps with people. That question of who do you care about and who cares about you is a really helpful starting point. And then just reaching out with invitations and introductions. There's some really natural times when people come together, like holiday time, Christmas is coming up, birthdays, inviting people over for a little happy hour or for a barbecue in the backyard, just starting by offering opportunities for people to come together. Maybe only 3 people will come, but that's 3 people. So kind of letting go of these expectations and starting small and just moving in that direction. Usually people find what they need.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's bringing us close to the end of our time today. So thank you for this wonderful presentation and for our participants for listening from across the province. So take care, everyone, and stay tuned for more virtual training meetings by Health Nexus.